Hi everyone, I'm Gavin, and I go by Shapiro500 on Instagram. And in today's tutorial, I'm going to show you a bunch of seamless looping techniques that I use, and we're going to make this video. The focus of this tutorial is going to be animation, so I'm going to provide all the assets to you. So I made all these like Japanese things. I'm also going to give you this penguin. This is the animated penguin I use. We're going to call him Timmy. Timmy's great. Timmy's also really terribly rigged. Like, this is just not good. What's going on here? Timmy is a free 3D scan that I got from this website, and I rigged him myself very poorly. I'll give you a link to the tutorial I used so you can rig things better. Everything I know about 3D scans is based on the movie Tron, so I'm pretty sure Timmy was murdered in the process. So we thank you for your sacrifice, Timmy. So I like making things 12 seconds long because 12 has a lot of factors, which means it has a lot of numbers that divide into it evenly. So if we're making different parts of our animation loop, we have a lot of different options for how many seconds that can be and still loop perfectly within 12 seconds. So for example, we can make a piece of the animation loop for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 6 seconds. And all of those are going to loop across 12 seconds perfectly. For 12 seconds, that's 360 frames. So we're going to make our timeline from 0 to 359. So our goal in this is to make frame 0 and frame 360 exactly the same and line those up. And then when we render it out, we're going to render out 0 to 359. Because if we render it out to 360, that last frame would look identical to the first frame and it would play twice and it would like stutter for a second. So the basic idea behind this is you make a scene and then you put the whole scene in a null. You make an instance of that and put the scene somewhere else. And you try to get the camera from your original scene to the instance, so that the start and the beginning look exactly the same. The way I like to do this is first I make just sort of the basic bare bones version of the scene, like just a simple version of it, just so I know how big it is. And then I focus on getting the animation put together. And once I get the animation looping smooth, then I flesh out the details. I made it so these parts are 2,000 units long, like this wall is 2,000 units long. So just remember that number for this one. So here's our scene, basic, simple scene. Okay, put the whole thing in a null. You can select a bunch of stuff and do Alt-G, and now it's in a null. We're gonna call this your whole scene. Let's just put it at 0 so it's easy to keep track of. Okay, the next step is you make an instance of your whole scene. And let's put this 2,000 units away from this. All right, so we've got the whole scene is 2,000 long. The instance of the other scene is 2,000 units away. And then the next step is to get a camera from this scene over to this scene. So the way I like doing that is I like making a null and then animating the null and then putting a camera in the null. And that makes it easy because if you want to change the position of the camera or you want to change what it's looking at, the animation stays the same, and you still have all the freedom to change the camera later on. So, you know, you put your camera here, looking nice, something like this. I like long lenses. Let's put this camera in the null. The null starts here, keyframe, and then remember 2,000 units long. Look at that, it looks the same. So we have the camera going from here to here. When we go through it here, from here to here. Look at that, first and last are the same. Oh, I forgot, this is on frame 359. This should be on frame 360 because we're trying to get 0 and 360 the same. When we render it, it's like you're going to just before the frame where it's lining up the same, and then it goes to the same frame. Let's make this camera move linear here so that it's just a perfect even move. So now it's set up really easily because we can just change anything in this whole scene and it's just going to happen in this instance of the scene. Another thing you should do in this instance, you should set it to render instance. And what that's going to do is instead of like duplicating all the geometry, it just sort of references the geometry. You'll be able to work in it a lot faster. And especially when the scene gets complicated, it would be kind of impossible to work in it if you didn't have this set. Okay, the next thing let's make this this garden, this Japanese Zen garden kind of thing with all these rocks going up and down. Back to C4D, I'm going to go to this Japanese items thing, grab the Zen garden. We want to put this in our whole scene thing. So since it's in the null, the whole scene null, it's going to get duplicated into that other instance. So now, how do we animate these so they loop perfectly? The way this thing is built, it's a fracture object with just a bunch of cubes in it. So what I'm going to do is apply a shader effector to this fracture object. And what this is going to do is animate them up and down. The way you're going to do this, you take the shader effector, add in a noise. What the shader effector does, it basically says take this texture and use this to drive animation properties over everything in this fracture object. So with a noise, what you can do is, let's go to the parameters. Instead of scale, let's have it do position because we want these to go up and down. We'll go to the noise, make the loop period 12 seconds, and let's try 1 for the speed. It just does it automatically. It's great. It's super easy. So now this is just going to animate. That's it, and it loops over 12 seconds. I want to make it so it's sort of higher in the middle and it falls off the edges there. So I'm going to add a spherical field. Go like this. Make it so it's big enough for all the rocks. Scale this here. And because we set this up in a way where it's duplicating it, it's already set up over here. It's already in the other instance. So if we go to our camera and play it through, it's still gonna loop. All right, so the next thing that we're gonna animate is this column going up and down. Let's go to our Japanese items thing. Let's take this big column and let's put it in this Zen garden. So let's start on frame 0. So let's put a keyframe at 0 for the Y position. And let's make this go down in 3 seconds and then back up in 3 seconds. So in 6 seconds, it'll get back to the same point that it's at. That means it'll loop twice in 12 seconds. Let's go to 90 frames. Put this down about there, set a keyframe. And now let's make that loop. In your timeline, you can go to the position of this column, and what you need to do is set this to oscillate. So it's going to say go to this keyframe, and then because we're on oscillate, it's going to go back to the initial keyframe, and it's just going to keep doing that. And because this is 3 seconds, we're going to be back up to where we started in 6 seconds, and that goes into 12 seconds. So this should loop seamlessly now. The next thing we want to do is we want to get this to spin around over the whole duration. So we can set a keyframe for the rotation here. And then by the time we get to the end here, we want this to be 360. We'll set that keyframe. Let's make sure this is at a frame 360 too, because we want frame 360 to line up with frame 0. Other thing we should do is on the rotation, let's just make this a linear curve instead. So that way it'll just go at an even pace, it'll rotate smoothly. And you can see that when we go back to our camera, it's already in the instance. Everything is going smoothly. This is great, making great progress. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna animate these columns here. Where are they? So these columns are moving up and down randomly, just like these cubes that we made before. These columns are also, they're rotating, and I have them set up so that they're randomly rotating either clockwise or counterclockwise, and I'm going to show you how to set that up automatically too. Let's duplicate this whole Zen garden. Let's put it over here. Rotate that. I'm going to clear out all those rocks, and I'm just going to keep this column because that's what we're going to be animating. Get rid of these tracks so we can just start fresh, and now just put a bunch of these around just however you want. I'm going to speed through this because we don't really need to see how this is done. Next step is to animate these. So what we're going to do, put them inside of a fracture object. Like this. Let's just put this in the middle of our garden here. Let's get all our columns in there. Take the shader effector that we animated before. Let's copy it over here. Don't need the field. And let's set this up for the columns. Basically, you just go to your columns fracture object and just drop that new shader effector in there. Everything disappeared. I think we gotta. I think we have to reverse the direction here. Let's see. Yeah, like this. So they're gonna go randomly from 0 to 125. And I'm going to tweak the settings on this noise because it looks like they're all just really high. I kind of want to have more dark points in the noise here so that there are more opportunities for them to be flush to the ground. Something like that. So now these are all going to go randomly up and down. And because this is still loop period 12, this is going to loop seamlessly as well. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get these columns to rotate randomly clockwise or counterclockwise. We're going to do that with the formula effector. So the formula effector is really, really powerful. It gives you a lot of control over animation. So let's make a formula effector. If you already clicked on this when you make it, it should be attached to it automatically. Let's call this random rotation. We want to affect the rotation. So I'm going to set this to 360, meaning one full revolution. And let's see, to break this down, let's just start by putting T for time in the formula field. So basically this is going to say the time in seconds is the number that's going to drive this value here. So at 1 second, it's going to move 360 degrees. So we can see that at 1 second, it moves 360 degrees around. So all of these columns get this formula applied to it. Obviously, that's pretty fast. So let's break this down a little bit. If we do T over 2, that means it's going to be every 2 seconds. This is still really, really fast. Let's do T over 6. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now these are all rotating at the same speed together, and we want them to alternate. So we want some of them to be rotating clockwise, some to be counterclockwise. How do we do that? The basic idea is we want to add a random number, either 1 or -1, multiply that by 6. So that way we're going to get some that have 6 and some that have -6, and they're going to go in random directions. Let's start by just generating a random number from 0 to 1. We're going to add also a random seed here, just so if we don't like the random combination that it makes, we can change that later. This is going to generate a random number between 0 and 1. This is going to generate numbers with decimals, so we want to make this an integer. If we add round at the beginning here, it's going to round the number to the nearest integer. So now from this, the only values we can get are 0 and 1. Our goal is to get either 1 or -1 so that we can multiply that by 6, and then we're done. So right now, this is going to give us either 0 or 1. The way you can do this, you multiply the whole thing by 2. So now we're going to get a random number, either 0 or 2. And then if we subtract 1, now the only numbers that it can spit out are either -1 or 1. So then all we got to do is multiply this whole thing times 6. So now the random numbers that we can get are 6 or -6. And then finally, put this whole thing in here and put it back to T over that whole value. So now some of these are going to be moving counterclockwise and some are going to be moving clockwise. One last thing that we can do, just to give this a little bit more variation, is to give them a different starting value, because they're all going to start at the same alignment. And then when they come back, they're going to end at the same alignment. So it would be nice if they had a little bit of variation in that. So you can just go and add a random effector, just change the parameter to rotation, make it 360. So now all of these are going to be a randomized value between 0 and 360. And they're also going to rotate in random directions. If you want to learn more about the formula effector, you can go to the help and type in appendix. And you should get a formula effector appendix. And this shows all of the different things you can put into the formula effector. And you can do a lot with it. Okay, next step. Let's animate this bamboo here on the side. So this bamboo is swaying ever so gently back and forth in the wind. And it's casting all these shadows here on the wall. So I'm going to show you how to loop this now. Back to our project. We got our design gardens here. Let's put some bamboo in here. So first, let's put a little front wall where like the bamboo is kind of going to live. I'm going to duplicate the back wall, put it over here. Let's get some bamboo from this Japanese item project. Bamboo pole, copy it from here, put it into our tutorial. I've already set this up with a bend deformer. So let's animate this bamboo bending, just sort of swaying in the wind. So here it's 0. Now let's make it like 11, I guess. And then, just pick a few keyframes. We'll just make it kind of swaying. We could probably just do this here, honestly. Okay. We have our bamboo swaying. Let's clone this. Let's make like a field of bamboo. So put this in our front wall here. Now it's in the scene. It's already going to get duplicated. Put this in a cloner. Here we go. It's looking nice. Okay. It's our little bamboo forest. As you can see, these are all swaying in the exact same way. Let's randomize this. Let's add a random effector. We are going to randomize the position. We don't really need to randomize Y. Just need to randomize the X and Z. So now they're a little, you know, the position's a little randomized. Cool. Let's randomize the rotation 360. So this way, now they're all sort of facing different directions. I'm going to move these a little bit more like that. Yeah, cool. Okay, this is starting to look good. So now they're all going in different positions. But the key, we want to try to figure out how to randomize the timing here. Just go to time offset. Let's randomize it 360 frames. So this is going to offset the frames, a random value from 360 to 0. So it doesn't work now because we need to make this loop. So in the cloner here, you just go to the cloner, and then in animation mode play, just change that to loop. And now it loops seamlessly. And that's it. So here's your bamboo forest. And then you can kind of adjust these however you want. Obviously, this is kind of in the way here. We can move the camera. Okay, so the timing of stuff is looping, but of course here at the end, it glitches out. It's like this whole chunk disappears. And if we look at why that's happening, it's because, you know, the camera's here. There's nothing in front of it. So let's make another whole scene instance. Let's put it on the other side. So it's here. So now hopefully when we go to the first and the last frame, these are going to be, oh yeah, look at that. It's all set. Perfect. Okay, so one more major step in this. If you look closely, you can see that the scene is covered in penguins. So we have to add penguins to our scene. So let's go to our Timmy project here. Let's grab Timmy. And we're going to put Timmy all over the place. Here's Timmy. He's in our scene. We got to keep him in the whole scene here, so he duplicates all over the place. And yeah, so Timmy is this is an alembic, so it's like baked down. There are no keyframes you can change. What I like doing to offset the timing a little bit, I'm gonna make another one. Put him over here. If you right click on this and do select children, it selects all the parts that are in here. You got to do this to change anything about an alembic because it has like a million parts in it. I'm going to offset this one minus 15 frames. The dancing animation is 1 full second, so they like stomp their feet twice a second. So this is basically just making it so one of these is going to be offset 15 frames. So they're just going in different directions. So some of these are going to be starting from 0. Some of them are starting 15 frames ahead of time. So it just gives it some variety. I'm going to call this one Timmy 15 just to just differentiate it. So the next step is to just put penguins all over everything you want. It doesn't really matter how you do that. That's up to you. Alright, so now we got our scene with a bunch of penguins dancing in it. Just to give it a little bit more variation, I like going in to each of these guys and offsetting some of them like by a frame or two. So that way it doesn't look like totally robotic. It looks like it's a little bit more realistic of a crowd. So just go to a few of them, select the children, and instead of like offsetting 15, do like 14 on this one. And then on these two, let's select the children here. Do like offset this like by 1 frame, and then this one we'll offset this one by 1 frame in the other direction. So now it's like it's more felt than seen, but it just gives it a little bit more of a natural look. So at this point, what I usually do is just check it out in the render. You know, we got to add a light in here. We don't have any lights, so this is an Octane. So let's fire up Octane render here. I'm gonna throw in daylight. Let's see, I'm going to make this just white. I don't want it to be like orange. And give us some light here. So now we got a light set up. So the next thing we want to do is make sure the first frame and the last frame line up in the render too. So go to your first frame, store this render buffer, hit your last frame, and we actually want to go 1 more frame to 360. Go through and see what's working and what isn't. As you can see, around here it looks like there is something that is not quite lining up right. I'm guessing that what's going on is that at the end, since this shadow is at such an angle, that the bamboo is not far enough to cast enough of a shadow over here. I think we just need to take this bamboo and move it up a little bit so that we get enough extra like shadows that'll cast the missing shadow over here. So if we go back here, let's go to the first frame. Let's store a render buffer so we can compare it, and then let's go to frame 360 and let's see how this looks now. Yeah, look at that. So it looks like that cleared it right up. So now I think we're good. I think we can render this and see if it actually ends up looping. A few other little final things. I never added an octane tag on this. This camera should have an octane tag. That'll let you choose a focus area. We don't want this to be autofocus. We're going to choose a focus area. We're going to bring up the aperture a little bit so we can get some depth of field here like this. And then I'll just do the highlight compression a little bit so that we get some of that detail back. Okay, cool. So now I'm going to throw this into render, and I'll see you guys on the other side. All right, and here's the final render. So this is looking pretty good. It looks like everything loops okay. Here's the loop point, and yeah, it looks like this worked out. It's a nice seamless loop. Yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer them in the comments. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye.